The emergency entrance of St. Gabriel Medical Center in Charleston, South Carolina, fell into complete silence the moment 4 Marine helicopters thundered out of the gray afternoon sky. Every doctor, every security guard, and every patient waiting outside looked upward in disbelief as the powerful aircraft circled once before landing in perfect formation. Dust filled the air, ambulance lights flashed against the concrete, and heavily equipped Marines rushed toward the hospital entrance with urgency written across every face. Nobody understood why America's military had suddenly arrived at an ordinary civilian hospital. Then a commanding officer stepped forward and announced that they were there for one person only. They were looking for someone known as Angel 6. The hospital staff exchanged confused looks before their eyes settled on the one person they had ignored all morning, a quiet nurse with a noticeable limp who had just been told to stay out of the way because she was slowing everyone down. Before we continue this unforgettable story, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel if you believe kindness, compassion, and second chances can change someone's life. Your support helps bring more inspiring stories like this to people around the world. Her name was Grace Bennett, a 39-year-old registered nurse who had spent nearly 2 decades caring for strangers while quietly carrying pain of her own. Years earlier, a devastating accident during a rescue mission overseas had permanently injured her left leg. Every step reminded her of that terrible day, but she refused to let the injury define her purpose. While many saw only the limp, her patient saw gentle hands, patient eyes, and a heart that never gave up on anyone. Grace arrived before sunrise every day and often stayed long after her shift ended because she believed every patient deserved someone who truly cared. Despite her dedication, some newer supervisors questioned whether she could keep up in a fast-paced trauma center. They never bothered to learn the story behind her determination. On that unforgettable morning, the emergency department overflowed with patients after a highway accident. Stretchers lined the hallways, alarms echoed through every corridor, and exhausted nurses raced from room to room. Grace quietly helped wherever she could, comforting frightened children, checking medications, and reassuring anxious families. When another emergency alert sounded, one supervisor glanced at Grace's limp and instructed her to remain behind while the younger nurses handled the incoming trauma victims. The words were polite but painful. Grace simply nodded, refusing to argue. She had grown accustomed to people underestimating her before they ever saw what she was capable of doing. As she organized medical supplies near the entrance, memories drifted through her mind. Few people knew that years ago she had volunteered with humanitarian medical teams supporting military rescue operations after natural disasters across the United States and overseas. During one catastrophic hurricane relief mission, she had repeatedly entered collapsing buildings to rescue wounded civilians and service members despite overwhelming danger. In those desperate hours, a Marine communications officer had quietly given her an unofficial radio call sign, Angel 6, because no matter how hopeless the situation became, she always seemed to appear with medical help just in time. Grace never considered the nickname important. She believed she had simply done what any compassionate nurse would have done. Back in the present, the thunder of helicopter blades shook the hospital windows. 4 Marine helicopters landed outside with incredible precision as dozens of uniformed personnel secured the area. Hospital administrators hurried toward the entrance expecting an important government official or injured military commander. Instead, the senior Marine officer calmly asked for Angel 6. Nobody understood what he meant. The administrators insisted no employee by that name worked there. The officer patiently repeated the request, explaining that Angel 6 had once saved the lives of 31 Marines during the deadliest rescue mission many of them had ever survived. Without her courage, dozens of families would have buried their loved ones instead of welcoming them home. Grace froze where she stood. She had never spoken publicly about that mission because she believed heroes were those who never returned. She quietly lowered her eyes, hoping someone else would answer. But one aging Marine stepped forward from the formation, his face marked by old scars and years of service. The moment he saw Grace, emotion overwhelmed him. He saluted her with complete respect before removing his cap. One by one, every Marine behind him did exactly the same. Doctors, nurses, patients, and visitors watched in stunned silence as an entire military unit honored the woman many had overlooked only moments earlier. The commanding officer explained that every year the surviving members of that rescue operation gathered to remember those they had lost and the extraordinary civilian nurse who had refused to abandon them. After years of searching, they had finally located Grace working quietly at St. Gabriel Medical Center. They had not come to celebrate war. They had come to thank the woman whose courage had given them the chance to watch their children grow, hold their grandchildren, and live ordinary lives they once believed impossible. Tears filled the eyes of hospital employees as they realized the quiet nurse with the limp had never once mentioned her remarkable past. Grace gently insisted she had only followed her conscience. She spoke about the frightened faces she remembered, the desperate need for hope during impossible moments, and the belief that every human life carried equal value. She explained that true service was never about recognition. It was about showing up when people needed someone most, even if nobody remembered your name afterward. The supervisor who had earlier asked Grace to stay behind stood silently, overwhelmed by regret. Walking forward with visible emotion, the supervisor apologized for judging her abilities by her injury instead of her character. Grace accepted the apology with the same kindness she offered every patient. She understood that people often made quick assumptions without knowing another person's story. Instead of holding bitterness, she chose forgiveness because she believed compassion healed far more than resentment ever could. The Marines then presented Grace with a simple wooden plaque engraved with the call sign Angel 6 and the names of every life she had helped save. It was not covered in gold or decorated with expensive medals. Its true value rested in the gratitude of families who still celebrated birthdays, graduations, weddings, and ordinary evenings together because one determined nurse had refused to give up. Every person standing in that hospital realized they were witnessing something far greater than a ceremony. They were witnessing humility receiving the honor it had never sought. News of the event spread throughout Charleston and across the country. Yet Grace returned to work the very next morning exactly as she always had. She checked patient charts, comforted worried families, and smiled warmly at strangers. Nothing about her kindness changed because recognition had never been her destination. The limp remained, reminding her daily of painful memories, but it also reminded her that scars could become symbols of strength instead of weakness. Patients who learned her story no longer saw an injured nurse. They saw living proof that quiet courage often wears the most ordinary face. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, subscribe to the channel, and let us know your thoughts because your support helps these powerful stories reach more people who need hope. Special request: before this story ends, please leave a comment with the words, "Kindness never walks alone," if you believe that true heroes are often the ones the world overlooks. As the sun slowly set beyond the hospital, the sound of the departing Marine helicopters echoed across the South Carolina sky. Grace watched them disappear with tears of gratitude, not because she had finally been recognized, but because the people she once fought to save were still alive to fly home. The greatest lesson was never about military honor or public applause. It was that every person carries a story invisible to everyone else. The quiet coworker, the struggling neighbor, the nurse with the limp, or the stranger standing alone may have already fought battles greater than we could ever imagine. The next time someone appears weak, slow, or ordinary, remember Grace Bennett. Because sometimes the person told to stay back is the very one heaven prepared to stand in front, proving that genuine compassion is the strongest force any human being can ever possess.